Hi, everyone, and welcome to this latest edition of the Michigan State Spartans Insider Podcast. I'm your beat reporter from Michigan State Spartans on SI, Aiden Champion. Today, I'm going to be breaking down and grading Michigan State's transfer class from this offseason. Obviously, things may not be done. Uh, I would suspect they're not going to bring in any more transfers, but I've thought that before, and they did. So I'm I've been wrong before, but I don't think it's, if they do, I don't think it would be anyone that changes things significantly in terms of rotations and whatnot. Um, so you essentially have, you know, the group you got going into fall camp. And overall, I look at this transfer portal haul, and I think it was, for the most part, pretty successful. My grade would be a B plus, and you may think, well, that doesn't sound that successful. I think that's a good grade with all things considered. Um, the only, reason I don't think it's an A status, well, a couple of reasons. One, you didn't go out and get a program changing guy, which, you don't necessarily need to, but if you're going to be in the headlines and considered a team that's expected to completely turn things around, then yeah, that's a move you'd like to make, um, but that just wasn't the case for Michigan State, and they looked to smaller schools. That's where they placed a lot of emphasis, um, and that's just kind of, you know, it's kind of what you got to do right now when you're Michigan State. You're coming off a 5-win season, coming off first year under a new regime. You're not going to get the really highly touted transfers. It's just not going to happen. So you got to do what you can do, and I think Jonathan Smith and his staff have done a solid job of that. Um, so with all things considered, that's why I think it's a success because um, you controlled what you could control, and um, you went out and you addressed areas of need. Um, you were clear about areas that you wanted to address. You went out and did it. Um, and so, you were able to be self-aware of your issues and groups that lack depth, um, groups that, needed replenishment. And you went out and got guys from, yeah, a lot of them smaller schools, but, um, kind of hidden gems, some of them. Um, you know, I'll start with the offensive line. I thought Michigan State did a really good job at adding to that room. Um, you get Connor Moore, who was probably their best transfer. You talk about big names. He was one of the best offensive linemen in the portal. And you're able to get him beat out Ohio State, who, if you guys have followed along with him and his background, he comes from an Ohio State um, family. They're all Ohio State fans, and he was kind of the odd one out. He was a Spartan fan growing up, so this is where he wanted to be. I think he helps this group immensely. Comes from a winning program at Montana State, um, and he's going to be big um, on the outside of the offensive line. Luka Vincic, who they added from Oregon State, has experience with this staff. Um, Matt Goldman, who's probably going to be your starting center. Um, heard good things about him in camp, and another guy with a lot of experience. I think that's going to help you a lot. Um, and overall, I think the offensive line, you did a pretty solid job at really attacking that group as, with it being a major need on your roster. Obviously, it was a big weakness for you last year. But you bring the right guys in, you'll have some returners, and um, I just I think they did a solid job with that room. Wide receiver obviously was probably they probably did their best work recruiting from the transfer portal with the wide receivers. Um, you get Krishan McCray, Amari Kelly, Rodney Bullard, guys who are all first team all conference at their former schools. Evan Boyd from Central Michigan might not see a lot of action this year, but a guy who um, could be a potential breakout guy next year. Uh, and now this room is deep. They joined Nick Marsh, who's going to be the face of this room, probably the face of the offense next to Aiden Childs. Um, and you make up for the losses of Montori Foster and um, Jaron Glover, Isaiah Johnson, and now you've got all these weapons for Aiden Childs, along with Nick Marsh and Jack Felling. I think they did a really good job um, revamping that group. Um, Looking over at running back, I think you could have done better. You only get one running back, Elijah Todd Tolliver, who was great at Sacramento State, but probably would have liked someone from a higher level program, um, or just brought in more bodies for that room. Because behind him, you've got guys who have very little experience, um, and so I think maybe that room could have done better. But I guess it remains to be seen if Tao Tolliver is able to translate his game to Big Ten level. Look at the secondary, added bunch of bodies there. You're going to have some great competition now, where guys earn their spots. And, um, I think it's huge. Obviously, I've talked about this before, but, you had so many injuries last year with the secondary. Now you got a ton of depth and a bunch of guys who could start. So that's huge. And if you run into injuries again, or you guys need to step up, um, that was a room I was very impressed that they were able to attack, especially after losing Demetrius Martin, who was one of your better recruiters. Um, so I, you know, kudos to the staff for what they were able to do with the defensive back room. Um, and then defensive line, I thought adding Grady Kelly was great. Um, you've done a great job with the edge position. You know, I feel like I've said this so many times, but Jonathan Smith said that towards the end of fall or spring camp that edge was going to be a group they were really going to be looking at in the transfer portal, and then boom, they go and they do it. Um, Add some depth there, add some potential starters, and um, obviously another weakness for this team last year was getting to the quarterback. And now you got more guys capable of doing that. Um, so you know, I look at all those groups and I think you really did pretty well to transfer portal. Obviously, recruiting from the high school ranks needs to amp up, but transfer portal really seems to be a strength of Jonathan Smith's. And as you start winning, you'll be able to start getting those big name recruit or transfers. Um, Guys coming from higher level programs who want to be at Michigan State. And I think Jonathan Smith, once you do start winning, will be able to get them. But this is the second year in a row where I thought he just did a great job of um, filling voids and, you know, just really attacking the portal and sticking to where you need to add depth. Um, and, you know, you say what you want about Jonathan Smith, but I think transfer portal is one of his biggest strengths. Um, and I think it should pan out for him. I mean, it panned out. Obviously, they won 5 games last year. Overall, it wasn't you know, where you wanted to be. But you look at guys who moved on. A lot of them were transfers. Luke Newman was your only uh, NFL draft selection. He was a transfer last year. Tanner Miller was a transfer, and he, um, got a camp invite. And Jordan Turner was the transfer. He got signed. Um, transfers made up a lot of your team last year. So there's your proof right there that Smith knows what he's doing, and they know how to find the right guys in the portal, guys who may be overlooked or um, are worth more than they may appear. So as always, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. It's almost the weekend. We're nearly there. Appreciate you all. Um, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.